New York, the night of the 8th of December, 1980. The cold sky hung over the Dakota Building apartments, where John Lennon, the former leader of the Beatles, was returning home with Yoko Ono after a long day in the studio. In his hands, he still carried unreleased tapes, proof of a promising new chapter in his career. But as he stepped toward the entrance, 5 gunshots rang out, ripping through the quiet night. Lennon collapsed on the steps, his blood staining the cold stone. Within minutes, the world had lost one of the greatest icons of music and peace. The news spread like wildfire. Millions wept by their radios and televisions. To many, John Lennon was not just a musician. He was the voice of a generation, a symbol of peace, the man who had declared, "Give peace a chance." But the tragedy in New York that night was not closed with the name of the killer, Mark David Chapman, the man who claimed, "I acted alone." Why was Chapman so obsessed that he had to kill Lennon? Was he truly just a deranged loner, or were there hidden forces behind it from the US? Government, which had tried several times to deport Lennon to shadowy groups that despised his message of peace? The question, who really wanted John Lennon dead, remains unanswered. And the truth behind that tragedy is darker than fans ever imagined. John Winston Lennon was born on the 9th of October, 1940, in Liverpool. As Britain lay under the bombs of World War II, the wail of air raid sirens, the Nazi Blitz, and a childhood steeped in fear left their imprint on him from the start. Lennon did not come into the world in peace, but in a hospital where windows were taped against flying shrapnel. That chaotic beginning planted in him a deep sense of insecurity, a trait that would later shape his rebellious, freedom-seeking nature. His father, Alfred Lennon, was a seaman who was absent for much of his childhood. His mother, Julia, was young, beautiful, and free-spirited, but unable to fully care for John. When his father abandoned the family and his mother could not cope, John was sent to live with his Aunt Mimi, a strict, disciplined woman who nevertheless provided him with stability. Her modest house at 251 Menlove Avenue became the foundation of the boy who would become John Lennon. Though Mimi disapproved, Julia occasionally appeared in John's life, and she was the one who nurtured his love of music. She taught him banjo, introduced him to Elvis Presley and Buddy Holly, the free-spirited sounds of America that ignited the soul of a boy living under rigid British rules. His complicated bond with his mother, close yet distant, left an emotional void that haunted him forever. Tragedy struck when John was 17. Julia was killed in a car accident just near Aunt Mimi's house. Her death devastated him, turning emotional wounds into lifelong scars. Years later, Lennon poured his grief into songs like Mother and Julia. That loss not only broke him but also forged his artistic persona, always searching for love yet resisting authority. School was a battlefield of rebellion. He mocked teachers, scribbled cartoons, and was labeled troublesome. But amid the doodles, he began writing poetry and satire. At the Liverpool College of Art, he met Cynthia Powell, his first love and later his wife. More importantly, he found music as a language to soothe his restless soul. In 1956, Lennon formed his first band, the Quarrymen, with friends. During one amateur performance, he met Paul McCartney, a gifted guitarist and songwriter. The meeting was destiny. Their nights spent writing songs together grew into one of the most legendary partnerships in 20th century music. Lennon's broken childhood had forged a unique artist soul, craving love, rejecting norms, and finding solace only in music. But this was only the beginning. From that fragile foundation, he would rise to become a legend, and at the same time, sow the seeds of tragedy. From the moment John met Paul in 1957, a creative spark was lit. Paul later brought in George Harrison, a young but talented guitarist, followed by Stuart Sutcliffe and Pete Best. The Quarrymen evolved into a new lineup, the Beatles. Their early years were grueling. They performed nightly in the smoky, rough clubs of Hamburg, Germany, before rowdy audiences. But it was there they sharpened their craft, learned to play like men possessed, and forged an unbreakable bond. Lennon, with his raspy voice, wit, and rebellious charisma, quickly became their center. By 1962, after Ringo Starr replaced Pete Best and EMI signed them, the Beatles' real story began. Love Me Do marked their debut, but it was Please, Please Me, and She Loves You that catapulted them to unprecedented heights. Britain was engulfed in Beatlemania, train stations overrun, concerts filled to the brim, the screams of thousands of fans drowning out the music. Lennon, McCartney, Harrison, and Starr became global icons. They were not just a band, they were a cultural phenomenon, the dream of 1,960-second youth. Lennon, with his round glasses and irreverent gaze, became a countercultural symbol, unafraid to say what others wouldn't. But fame brought cracks. Lennon shocked the world by saying, "The Beatles are more popular than Jesus." The backlash was furious, record burnings across America, and Lennon became a target for conservatives. Worn down by relentless schedules and media pressure, and craving artistic freedom, Lennon drifted from the band. While Paul sought perfection, John turned toward experimental art, politics, and unconventional relationships. In 1966, he met Yoko Ono, an avant-garde Japanese artist. Their bond transformed him. Lennon sought to be more than a pop star, to merge music with social activism and peace messages. But this love also widened the rift within the Beatles. By 1970, with internal tensions boiling, the Beatles broke up. The world mourned, but Lennon felt both liberated and embittered. His solo career followed. Imagine became a timeless anthem of peace, while Give Peace a Chance echoed at protests worldwide. Lennon was no longer just a musician, he was a political activist, a voice against the Vietnam War, and a thorn in the side of US authorities. But as his light burned brightest, shadows grew. Pressure, hostility from conservatives, surveillance by the FBI and CIA, and personal crises pushed him into darkness. These cracks would soon erupt into tragedy. By the early 1972nd, Lennon was both a symbol of peace and a target of hate. His marriage to Yoko Ono made him a lightning rod for criticism. The press dubbed her the woman who broke up the Beatles. Fans protested and Lennon's once unified following fractured. Behind the scenes, he battled personal demons, alcohol, drugs, and a notorious lost weekend of nearly 18 months away from Yoko, living recklessly, bar fights, his career nearly destroyed. He suffered depression, haunted by the deaths of his mother and his friend, Stuart Sutcliffe. But his greatest threat came not from within, but from the US government. For opposing the Vietnam War and supporting student movements, he became an FBI target. Under J. Edgar Hoover, the Bureau wiretapped his phone, intercepted his mail, and sent agents to infiltrate his events. Nixon's administration feared Lennon could mobilize young voters against them. From 1972, Lennon fought deportation. For years, he lived in fear of being expelled from New York, the city he called home. Declassified files later revealed the FBI even labeled him a national security threat, simply for singing peace songs. Meanwhile, hate mail and death threats poured in. Lennon once said, "I could be shot by a madman any day, just for saying the truth." Though he later retreated into family life with Yoko and their son Sean, Lennon never shed his unease. By the late 1972nd, he returned to the studio releasing Double Fantasy. He declared a new chapter had begun, that he had finally found balance in love, family, and music. But just as he dreamed of peace, tragedy drew closer. The 8th of December, 1980. That morning, Lennon posed with Yoko for Rolling Stone. The photograph John nude curled around Yoko would become their last iconic image. At 5 p.m., as Lennon left Dakota for the studio, he encountered Mark David Chapman, a fan from Hawaii. Chapman asked him to sign Double Fantasy. Lennon obliged, unaware that hours later, the same hand that signed would be soaked in blood. The chilling photo of Lennon autographing Chapman's album still exists. That night, Lennon and Yoko returned home. At 10:50 p.m., as they entered Dakota, Chapman emerged from the shadows. 5 shots rang out, 4 struck Lennon in the back. Staggering inside, he collapsed in the lobby. He was rushed to Roosevelt Hospital, but could not be saved. At 11:15 p.m., John Lennon was pronounced dead. He was only 40. The world froze in disbelief. Thousands gathered silently in Central Park, many sobbing and clinging to one another. Chapman was arrested on the spot. He did not flee. He simply sat reading J.D. Salinger's The Catcher in the Rye, which he called his Bible. He later claimed he killed Lennon because the star was a phony, singing "Imagine No Possessions" while living in luxury. But doubts linger. Was Chapman truly a lone madman? Theories abound. Some claim he was influenced by CIA mind control programs like MKUltra. Others suspect FBI or CIA involvement given Lennon's activism. Some believe Chapman did not act alone but as part of a larger plot. The truth remains shrouded. Yoko Ono refused a public funeral, wishing only for peace. As John had sung, "All we are saying is give peace a chance." That night did not just kill a man. It shattered a generation's belief that music could change the world. John Lennon's death ended not only the life of an artist, but a golden chapter of cultural history. Yet his songs endure, prophetic in their calls for peace and love. Imagine became an immortal anthem, sung at protests, memorials, and in the hearts of millions longing for a world without borders or war. Today, Central Park's Strawberry Fields Memorial draws fans worldwide who bring flowers, guitars, and handwritten lyrics. Every the 8th of December, they gather to sing, "Give Peace a Chance." But the haunting question remains, who really wanted John Lennon dead? Perhaps we will never know. Maybe it was the act of one disturbed man, maybe the visible edge of a deeper conspiracy. What is certain is that Lennon's death made him eternal, not just in music, but in humanity's yearning for peace. We love his songs, we admire his rebellion and honesty, but above all, we see this truth. Behind the round glasses and the guitar, John Lennon was still just a man vulnerable, wounded, but brave enough to live fully for his ideals. And that is what made him immortal.